Welcome to another episode of today's Conversations on Leadership, powered by Life University. I'm Dr. Gilles LaMarche, your host, and thrilled today to spend some time with someone who's completely new to me that I had the pleasure of meeting just a few minutes ago, Mr. Jon Yarian. Jon has been in the business world for over 2 decades, currently serves on the team at Sovereign, and what he really likes to talk about is the 24 concepts that ignite, unstick, and supercharge your work life. So Jon, welcome to today's Conversations on Leadership. And let's talk about that great subject. But before we go there, I've read that you've got a new book coming out in May, just a few weeks from now. Please tell the audience about your book. Tell us a little bit about you. And let's talk about this great concept of leadership and how people can really get ignited to step up and become better leaders in the world that we live in.
It's a pleasure to be here. We're excited about the book. It's called Spark, 24 Concepts. You said it a moment ago. Anyone who wants to learn more about it can find it at sparkbook.com. And I don't know if anyone listening can relate, but I work with people. That's what I do every day. And the focus of my work is optimizing the performance of the people around me to create the best outcome. So that has us thinking a lot about how people work and how they collaborate. And the best way I can describe the book, and this will relate to what we'll want to talk about later, is I would want you to know that I know exactly what a quiche is. The dish. I know what a quiche is. I know what it looks like. I know what it tastes like. I know what it is. I cannot make one. I do not know how. You could put me in a kitchen with all of the ingredients, and despite the fact that I know what a quiche is, I could be in there all day and you would never get a quiche out of it. That's an example of how things work for most folks when you talk about concepts like leadership or collaboration or co-creation. They have a sense of it. They have an experience of knowing what it is, but they cannot actually break it down for you or describe it in a way that's actionable or practical. And so this book is an effort to do exactly that. It's in a series of essays to offer you enough detail, a recipe, if you will, on these concepts that you could literally go try it. You could do it. You could make a quiche, as it were. And, for us, we kind of think of the book as foolproof because even if our description or our recipe doesn't work for you, in the act of trying it, you will create your own, right? You will get to that for yourself. So it works either way. The point is to have something there when you think about leadership or what it means to be a leader. And we're really excited to share that with the world.
I like the fact that you use the quiche as an example because in my spare time, I love to cook. So cooking for me takes me out of the office, out of being around, tons and tons of people every single day, and like alone with my player piano playing in the background and just like sort of chilling out. And what often happens is that I don't follow a recipe. So I'm the type of cook is I will look in the fridge and say, what do I have? Then look in the pantry, what ingredients that I have that I can put together and create an amazing meal for my wife who does not like to cook. And I guess I somewhat approach leadership that way too, because you talk about 2 words that are very dear to my heart, collaborations and co-creation, right? Leaders can't do anything by themselves. I mean, all of us understand that we can only lead a great team if we build a great team with us that are willing to follow and then to collaborate with each other and to co-create so that we become better together. I'd love for you to talk about that.
So, for us, leadership is something that anybody can start practicing. It is not an expression of hierarchy or authority. It's who you are with another person in relationship to something else outside yourself. And I think that's the first big principle we would want people to notice is leadership is not granted. It doesn't come with a promotion, right? Being a CEO doesn't make you a leader. It makes you a CEO. Many CEOs are bad leaders. Leadership is a way of being in an environment with others that serves them, right? That's a big one, actually serves them in an effort to create something that could only be possible if we all work together. And I think that service piece is often overlooked. It's like, well, wait, I thought leadership means John gets to tell Gilles what to do. It's like, well, no, that's missing the point. It would be me considering how to serve him in the process of creating a great podcast. That would be leadership. And I can do that and be a demonstration of it. And oh, by the way, I don't have to have a title. I don't have to be called the leader of the podcast. I can just be doing it.
Right. I appreciate that. So your journey into leadership, look back 20 years ago, what allowed you to get to where you're at right now, where you can actually be writing a book on the concepts that you're sharing on leadership and become an authority that people are willing to listen to because you bring value to the conversation?
The powerful and sincere experience of realizing that I didn't know what I was talking about. This was some years ago. So I'm good at sounding like I know what I'm talking about. And that's great. That's a gift in a way. And it opened up a lot of doors for me and created some things that people would describe as success. But it also had this mounting realization within myself that I'm just parroting words. I'm acting in ways that I know seem effective to others, but I'm not really making an impact. Not really. And it bothered me. And I just got to a point where I became ready to ask some really dumb questions, to really expose myself in ways that were uncomfortable. And in doing that, learn, boy, I've got a lot of company. I'm not alone in this. What the ignorance that I feared would have me rejected by others instead had us getting closer. Because
you were embraced because you were willing to be vulnerable.
That's right. And so, I get to write a book because I got really clear on the fact that I don't know very much, which is maybe a strange answer, but it's a direct line for me. It was that clarity that started me on a journey of actually having something to offer. And so that's really exciting and fulfilling. And the best part is I think it's available to anyone. I would say if I can write a book, listener, you can too. Believe me. If that's what.
How did you achieve? What were the first steps? So you come from a space of realization. You realize you didn't know it all.
Yep.
So what were the first steps that you took other than asking what you call dumb questions, which were probably really smart questions at the time anyway, right? What were the different steps that led you to where you're at now that our listeners could learn from?
Okay, so let me make it. The honest answer is some of that's aging and seasoning and maturing in myself. That's not you can't say, okay, John, great, I'll go do that. That's a process of growing up. But what that had me available for was what occurred to me at that time as risk taking, being with people in ways that I had consciously avoided earlier in my life for fear of seeming vulnerable or awkward or weird, and just leaning into it. And being willing to say, I don't understand. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what success looks like. And what that allowed me to receive was a lot of help from a lot of people. I had lived previously in a way like that wasn't available. And what I discovered is people help all the time. So that's a really big hack and a shortcut is being your authentic self, presenting yourself to somebody else as you are, and having them understand what you need gets you so much closer to getting it because they'll explain it. They'll bring you along. And that's been a wonderful experience up to this point.
So a willingness to ask questions. And from what I heard you say, you didn't use that word, but discovering along the way that there were people that were willing to support you in that growth that I would call a mentor or many mentors along the way. Can you speak to that? Am I assuming correctly that you've had mentors along the way?
I've had some wonderful people who are very, very patient with me.
So can you speak to that, the power of mentorship?
Oh, absolutely. Mentorship for me, or the way that I've experienced it, is not like having this person from on high tell me down here what to do or how to think. It was somebody who was really and truly giving away without the expectation of return what they knew from the perspective that there is plenty of success for everyone, that my success would not take away from their success. In fact, it might increase it because it's a limitless resource. And so they gave it away. And that was so powerful for me and helped me through that demonstration, see that and try to be that myself every day. But really see it as a transaction without a purchase price. It's serving somebody else just to do it.
So if you can think back, when you discovered this concept of mentorship and the people's willingness to support you in your growth, what was the feeling that you experienced? I always love to get into the feelings, right? So we get out of the strategies. Well, how did that make you feel? And how did that feeling then fuel you to continue to want to grow?
Well, a lot of gratitude, but in that there were some other challenging feelings, because a great mentor will show you where the work is. And that's not what you're already good at. It's not what comes easy. They'll show you where the work is. And that's usually an area you don't want to look. You'd prefer not to be. It's where you occur for yourself as deficient or insufficient. But they can do that in a way that doesn't diminish you. It has you see the work ahead and that it's possible to go through it. So there's gratitude, and there was like some fear and some concern, right? Because it had me confronting the stuff that I needed to deal with. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a blend, back to the quiche part. There were just a few ingredients in there. It wasn't all one thing for me.
Yeah, which is great, because I'll tell you, if you were in my office where I'm at now at Life University, you would see that on my desk sits a jar of heart-shaped stones, which are gratitude stones. So I go into my pocket. I'd never leave home without having one of these in my pocket. And
that's fantastic.
It reminds me every single day when I put it in my pocket in the morning, because it's the first thing I put into my pocket. It's the only thing that goes into my right-hand pocket of the pants that I'm wearing. And every time I put my hands in my pockets, which as men we often do, I remind myself, I feel it. It's become a metaphor, but it's an anchor. I feel it. And no matter what is happening in my surroundings in the moment, I stop for a second. I say, and what am I grateful for right now? And I personally have found the power of gratitude allows us the power to be vulnerable and open. And you may not know this, but the foundational philosophy at Life University is lasting purpose, to give, do, love, serve from your own abundance with no expectation of return. So you use those words, and I was like, man, that guy gets it. Like, you get what I get. And then you've shared some pretty powerful, gems already in this short few minutes we've had together.
Well, I love the gratitude stone. And what I would want to point out for listeners to make sure they don't miss it is, can you see the leadership there and somebody taking responsibility to organize themselves or what they carry, what they have, or how they experience the world in a way that has them connected to what matters most? So there's planning there. There's a physical object. There's a sensation. There's a sequence. But by virtue of taking ownership of that and creating it for yourself, you're going to be a leader. You're going to be grateful more often and more consistently. And to me, it's really about having people understand you can do any kind of weird thing you want. If it produces the version of you that connects with other people and gets things done, great. Be responsible for the conditions that would have you be that way. And don't get held up because, well, other people don't do it or it's weird or whatever. Like, no. Go straight for that. And if that means walking around with, a rock in your pocket every day, so much the better. I love it.
Yeah, and I've handed out thousands of these around the globe. So whether I'm on a Delta flight or I'm checking into a hotel and somebody's providing a really good service or they're greeting you with a beautiful smile, I go into my left-hand pocket. I take out a bunch and I said, have you ever heard of the concept of a gratitude stone? And the majority of people say no. Some have heard of it, but very rarely do they say they've heard about it. I said, well, a gratitude stone is a metaphor, or it's an anchor that you choose to carry with you to remind yourself of all the reasons you have to be grateful, even during difficult times, and maybe more so even during difficult times. And then I'll open my hand and I'll say, would you like one? And I'll usually have 5 or 6 of them in my hand. They're multiple colors, from blue to green to yellow, whatever they might be. And people are going like, wow. And I've had a few, I won't mention names, very influential, very well-known people in the United States receive one from me. and I see like this little tear go down their face of the fact that I'm taking time to
That's
show
right.
them gratitude for what they've been doing for society, whether they're politicians or business people that I've had an opportunity to interact with. And so I continue to do it. And the fact that you brought it up as one of, I guess, the lead feelings that you had that allowed you to grow as a leader,
Yep.
speaks volumes on
Yeah,
what
and
we do.
it works for both of us because it's real. So just to end the suspense, listeners, there's nothing magic about stones. Okay, they're just stones. What occurs is an opportunity to express that sincerity and to have somebody connect with the gratitude you're feeling, and boom, it shows up in them. But you can use whatever you want. It could be anything. The object doesn't matter. It's the intentionality and the presence that creates so much between people. And I just love stuff like that.
So maybe our second to last question, because we like to keep these podcasts relatively short. In your current role as a leader with your company, Sovereign, what are some of the tactics that you utilize for you to feel that you're really into your leadership role? So do you have any rituals, that John follows to make sure that you're like on it every single day, that you're focused, or you're paying attention to your people? Any particular rituals that could be beneficial for others to learn?
Yeah, I've got one. It's pretty significant. You and I could talk about it for hours, but I'll do it in like 2 minutes, which is constantly checking in with myself in advance of or after interactions to get clear on what's coming up for me, and then to compare that with my stated intention or commitment. Because I'm human. So what comes up for me all the time is a desire to be popular, a desire to be liked, a desire to be included. Those are all there. And that is not the same thing as showing up with somebody committed to growing a company or making a product or making a difference. I've got to separate the two. And so that's me before I come in any room, is I get clear on who I'm going to be. Am I going to be a guy who's trying to seem smart in a meeting, or am I going to get something done? Doing that changes the way I show up. That has me already being a leader before we start doing anything, because it changes my affect and the way that I am. And the more mindful I can be of who I am, it makes everything so much easier. It is the foundation or the potential for everything that we could create. But that requires me to do the work on myself. And so you could call it a technique. It's kind of a lifestyle. But what I would encourage everyone to do is, think about and create time and build a habit of checking in on yourself and be real honest. What am I doing here? What am I about to do in this room? Am I going to get on this podcast to serve the audience, or am I going to try to be funny? Because those are two different things. You pick one, but get clear.
So you talked about conscious intentionality. Yeah, being fully intentional as to why you're choosing to show up in that particular sphere today, in this particular hour, is a big piece. And for me, that's one of my morning rituals is how am I going to choose to show up today in every single interaction? And once I get clear with how I want to show up from a feeling perspective, it's only after that I look at my agenda and say, okay, so today I've got a meeting with so-and-so, I've got a podcast with John, and I say, how am I going to show up here? I'm going to show up here. And they're going to be different because in between the first hour today and the 7th or 8th or 10th or 12th hour of my day at the office, I want to be showing up fully engaged.
That's
so
right.
I love you're talking about, conscious intentionality.
And notice we're not suppressing our feelings. I'm not telling you you're not going to feel different ways. What I am saying is you can notice and acknowledge it and still live into your commitment, and then you will show up differently. But this is not a point about suppressing how you feel or trying to shut off your natural impulse. It's just learning to manage it so you can be effective.
I'm already excited about reading your new book.
Great.
Because you gave me some snippets that say, okay, that is how I think. That is how I've developed my leadership skills over the years. These are some of the lessons I've learned from the mentors that I've had the honor and the privilege of working with. And putting it all together in the synopsis that you talked about with, I guess, 24 probably different lessons or concepts that will be part of Spark are going to be pretty important. And when I read that 24 concepts to ignite, unstick, and supercharge your work life, my suspicion, and I don't like to assume, was that when we learn those concepts are probably applicable to our personal lives as well, not just our work life.
You're just a person everywhere you are. So the more you try to separate that, the more challenges you're going to have. The title is pretty intentional. We're talking about your work life because this is a great way in for people to be in the conversation and connect it to their performance or achievement at work. And you just are who you are.
Exactly.
All the same.
So do you have a closing comment for our audience, Jon?
It's wonderful to be with you. I love the show. And to anyone listening, I would just say sparkbook.com is a great place to go to find out more about the book or pre-order. And let's take this opportunity right now to think about what we're going to do next and decide who we're going to be while we do it. And anyone and everyone can do that. You can do it right now. And so I would encourage that and just say that I've really appreciated the time.
Just read it now. Yes, I was taking notes. I got an entire page of notes from our conversation today. So thank you once again for joining us on today's conversation on leadership. I think somehow maybe through LinkedIn, we'll stay connected. We'll figure out a way where we can meet face to face.
We will.
In the not too distant future.
We will. We have to.
Thanks so much for joining me, Jon.
Thank you.